Hello everybody, my name is Linda. I'm the resident vet here at Pooch and today I wanted to do a little video about wet food versus dry food, why we might feed one, why we might feed the other, if we can feed both, because this is a question I get asked quite a lot by clients in my clinic. So what about feeding just a dry food diet? Absolutely, I think for a lot of dogs this is a really good option. When it comes to feeding just dry food, actually I'm a really big fan. So it's specifically good for preventing dental disease, whether this is in dogs who have previously had problems with their teeth or who have needed dental cleanings, or whether it's in those breeds that are prone to getting problems with their teeth. So that might be your Whippets, your Greyhounds, or those more flat-faced breeds with smaller jaws, so like your Shih Tzu or your Pug and your King Charles. These are all dogs that are more prone to getting dental disease. And the benefit of feeding that hard bit of kibble is that when they chew down on the kibble, it will break off and they'll swallow it, and not a lot is left behind on the tooth. So certainly feeding an exclusively dry food diet is really beneficial for those dogs. Another good thing is that there's less mess. So that's really good for us. It means, we're not cleaning up so much around the bowl, they're not getting caked onto things or getting maybe rubbed onto the carpet after they've got a bit of wet food on their face. And those dogs that have beards and mustaches, so like the Schnauzer for example, they're not getting such messy fur, so it can be a little bit more hygienic. It's also a little bit easier to store perhaps, so you can keep it in large containers, and it can store for a longer period, so that's quite useful for some people. Okay, and what if we want to feed just wet food? Absolutely, again, for some dogs this is the right option, but really with wet food, there are again health benefits. So the main benefit for wet food would be that it's specifically good for those dogs who may have some issues with their urinary tract. So for example, those dogs that are prone to getting urinary crystals or urinary stones, and perhaps they're a breed that's predisposed to kidney issues down the line, or maybe they're constantly getting recurrent UTIs or urinary tract infections. These dogs need lots of fluid because it helps to flush things through, and the urine isn't getting stagnant in the bladder, and so actually feeding a food that's got lots of water in it is really good for these dogs. Now some owners will say to me, my dog's on a dry food diet and they drink loads, is that okay? Yes. Absolutely, that's the dog sort of flushing themselves through, keeping themselves well hydrated, and then that's absolutely fine. But some owners, will just prefer to have that extra peace of mind, the dog's getting lots of fluid in their wet food. Another thing about wet food, dogs tend to prefer the flavour, they find it a bit more palatable and they prefer to eat it, perhaps it's a bit easier to eat, and this is especially true in dogs who maybe have a bit of dental disease, so maybe they've got a bit of toothache, and certainly that's something we should talk to the vet about because they might benefit from a dental cleaning. A compromise, if you are keen for them to have some dry food, is to mix it in. So mixed feeding. Mixed feeding is basically when you feed a little bit of wet, a little bit of dry. You might change it up from day to day depending on what your dog's been doing, or maybe if you're out and about and things like that. But basically it just means you don't feed only dry or only wet, you feed some sort of combination of both. What you feed and in which proportion is going to depend on you and the dog. So for example, some owners want to feed mostly dry food, and maybe their dog's prone to dental disease, but they maybe have to give their dog a little bit of a nudge to eat it, so they just give 5% wet food, just a little bit, just sort of mix it in, make the dog a bit more tempted to eat it. Or a lot of owners, what they'll do is feed half and half. So whether this means mixing half and half in the same bowl, so you kind of get the best of both worlds, or whether this means maybe in the morning they get wet, or in the evening they get dry, it's whatever suits you, and there's lots of different options out there. What I will say is be a little bit cautious in those dogs who are maybe a bit overweight or prone to getting overweight, because mixed feeding can lead to putting on weight if we're not sensible and if we're not thinking about calories. A dog can go on a diet, a dry food diet, a wet food diet, a mixed food diet, all will eventually lead to weight loss if done correctly. We don't have to feed, some people think you just have to give a dry food diet, but that's not true. It's worth mentioning if you are concerned about your dog's weight and you're keen to get them to lose weight, we do have Slim and Slender food, which is one of our dry kibble foods you may wish to consider. So I just want to go through some of our wet foods here at Pooch and Mutt. So we serve them in these little cartons, so these are great for the environment. I think it's a really handy size. There is 4 different flavours. We've got turkey and chicken, there's turkey and duck, chicken and beef, and chicken, pumpkin and pea, and there is actually a fish one coming soon. They're all packed full of fresh ingredients, natural ingredients. Meat is the first ingredient for all of them, and then you have lots of lovely fruit, vegetables, some dried algae, and also some prebiotics, which we know are really good for gut health and just for overall health in general. All of our wet foods are complete foods, so that means you don't have to add anything to them, and they've got all of the nutrients that your dog needs to stay healthy. However, they don't have any added supplements. So for example, if your dog maybe has joint disease and you want to start giving them, fish oils or glucosamine, in that case you may want to add some of our supplements. So whether it's our salmon oil or our bionic biotic supplements, and these can always be added in after. And the same holds true for our dry food. Again, with the dry food, we've got the puppy food and the adult food, so it depends what life stage your dog is at. These are complete foods. You don't need to mess with them, to add anything to them, and you don't have to give it with wet food, although you can if you like. But as I say, if you want to kind of make them a little bit more kind of tailor-made for your dog and their specific needs, you can always add in some supplements and give them each day. So I think that's a really nice option there. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about Pooch and Mutt's dry food. So we do have quite a few different dry foods available. These would be kind of our standard or more common dry food. So we've got the puppy chicken and superfood, and we've got the adult chicken and superfood. And you can certainly start with the puppy and then move on to the adult as your puppy gets older. When you do this depends on their size. So large breeds mature slower, and it will take them longer until they need to be switched on to that adult food. Why I love these foods is because they're just packed full of fresh and really nutritious ingredients, and they are grain free, they're junk free. There's no additives in there that aren't needed by the dog. They're enriched with lots of lovely things, so things like prebiotics, which help to support gut health, lead to the development of good bacteria, which we know has loads of wide-ranging benefits, from better skin and coat quality, to even a strengthened immune system, perhaps less diarrhea in those who have sensitive stomachs. So that's definitely a benefit. Then they also contain a calming supplement, so we've got L-tryptophan and chamomile to help your dogs feel good and be in a good mood, and particularly for puppies who may be a little bit hyper or can be a little bit boisterous, a natural sort of calming supplement can be really beneficial for lots of those more energetic puppies. The superfood, so that it's just full of things like fruit and vegetables, sweet potato, which is a really good slow releasing carbohydrate, keeps your dog gives them energy for a longer period of time. We've got things like cranberries, which are great for bladder health, kale, all sorts of these foods that you yourself would eat. Why wouldn't you feed your dog the same foods that we're getting? So I'm a big fan of these foods, and if your dog has specific requirements or specific health needs, take a look at our other dry foods that are there. My dog, for example, is on the calm and relaxed dry food because he is a little bit manic at times, even though we're doing lots of training with him. He's only 2, so he's still learning, but he definitely benefits from that dry food.